When I moved to Maple Grove Estates 5 years ago, I thought I'd finally found peace. After 30 years serving in the Army, 22 of them overseas, I was ready for a quiet life with my wife, Laura. We'd built our retirement dream home ourselves on a corner lot, complete with gardens she loved and a workshop where I could fix anything from a mower to a motorbike. The neighborhood looked picture perfect. Rows of well-trimmed hedges, tidy sidewalks, and brick mailboxes that matched every house. But perfection has a price, and in our case, it came in the form of the Homeowners Association and its self-appointed queen, Karen Whitmore. Karen was the kind of woman who treated her clipboard like a sword. She'd march down the sidewalks, sunglasses perched on her nose like she was on patrol, peering over fences and jotting notes about unsightly items or unauthorized modifications. I saw her first week we moved in, snapping photos of my driveway because Laura had parked the truck slightly over the line. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she'd said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We have standards here." Laura, bless her, just smiled back. "Good," she said. "So do we." That was the start of it. Over the next few years, Karen made it her personal mission to make our lives miserable. If a flower pot was too bright, she'd send notice. If my workshop door was open too long, another warning arrived. Once, she even left a note saying Laura's American flag was not regulation size. But Laura was unflappable. Maybe that came from her years in the service, too. Most folks didn't know my wife had been a decorated military police commander, retired Colonel Laura Jensen. She didn't go around bragging about it. But I'd seen her hold her ground against men twice her size in places twice as dangerous as Maple Grove. Karen didn't know it yet, but she was playing with the wrong woman. The real trouble started last spring. I'd been working in the backyard fixing the irrigation line when I heard shouting from front. When I got around the corner, I found Karen standing in our flower bed, waving a clipboard and yelling at Laura about the unauthorized shed we'd put behind the garage. "This structure violates Section 8A of the HOA Code," Karen barked, pointing like she was issuing a citation. "You didn't get approval." Laura folded her arms. "That's not a structure. That's a gardening shed. It's still a violation." Karen snapped. "And since you ignored the notice I mailed." "We didn't ignore anything," Laura said calmly. "We just chose not to respond to nonsense." Karen's face flushed red. "You'll regret that attitude," she hissed. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say, more like a threat than a complaint. Over the next week, Karen started hovering around our place more often. I caught her peeking through our fence at night, with a flashlight once. Another time, she accidentally tripped our motion lights while pretending to jog by. Laura told me not to worry. "Bullies always push until they meet a wall," she said. "She'll find hers soon enough." She was right. It happened on a Sunday morning. Laura and I had gone into town for groceries, came home around noon, and found our side gate hanging open. At first, I thought maybe the wind had caught it. But when I got closer, I saw the lock was snapped clean off. Laura's voice went low and steady. "Stay behind me." She stepped inside first, quiet and alert like she was back on patrol. I followed, my stomach twisting. The back door was cracked open. We went in slow, and that's when I saw moving by the window. Karen, in our kitchen, wearing gloves and holding her phone like she was taking pictures. "What in the hell?" I started, but Laura's voice cut through. "Step away from the counter, Karen." Karen jumped and spun around, eyes wide. I was inspecting," she stammered. "You have no right to lock that gate. It's community property." "This is private property," Laura said firmly. "You broke in." "I most certainly did not. I was checking for unauthorized modifications to your fence line." Karen tried to push past Laura, but Laura stepped forward, blocking with a calm that only years of command can give. "You're trespassing," she said. "Leave now or I'll call the police." Karen's voice rose. "I'll call them myself. You assaulted me." She stormed out the front door, yelling into her phone about hostile neighbors. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled up, lights flashing. Karen stood in the driveway, gesturing dramatically toward our house like she was directing traffic. "There," she cried. "Those 2 threatened me. She attacked me. I demand they be arrested immediately. The officers stepped out. One was young, maybe late 20s. The other, well, the moment he saw Laura, everything changed. "Commander Jensen?" he said, his voice breaking into disbelief. Laura blinked. "Sergeant Alvarez?" I'll never forget the look on Karen's face. She froze mid-rant, staring between them like she couldn't process what was happening. Alvarez straightened up. "Ma'am, he looked almost embarrassed. I didn't realize this was your residence." "Good to see you again, Sergeant," Laura said evenly. "You've done well for yourself." Karen sputtered. You know her?" Alvarez turned to her with a stare sharp enough to cut glass. "Know her? Ma'am, that woman trained half the department's crisis response unit." The young officer's eyes widened. "Wait, you're that Commander Jensen?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Commander?" she repeated weakly. "Yes," Laura said calmly. "Retired. And I'd appreciate it if this trespasser was escorted off my property." Karen's confidence evaporated instantly. I didn't mean to break in. I was just trying to enforce the HOA's landscaping policy." Laura finished. "In someone's kitchen?" Even Alvarez couldn't hide a small smirk. Karen tried to backpedal, saying she must have gotten turned around. But the damage was done. Alvarez took her statement, then took ours. When Laura mentioned the broken lock, he sighed. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "you'll need to come with us to answer some questions downtown." "Wait, you're arresting me?" "Breaking and entering is a serious offense," he said flatly. Karen was furious, but for once, she was speechless. As they led her to the cruiser, she glared at Laura like she'd just lost a war she didn't know she was fighting. When they were gone, I looked at Laura, still calm as ever. "Commander Jensen," I teased, "you didn't tell me you trained half the police force." She shrugged with a smile. "I didn't think it had come up. We thought that was the end of it. But Karen's downfall was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, rumors spread fast around Maple Grove. The HOA board tried to quietly remove Karen as president, but word got out about her arrest. Some neighbors came by to apologize for never speaking up about her harassment. Turns out, she bullied just about everyone in the neighborhood. One man told me she'd fine his wife $100 for hanging laundry improperly. Another said she demanded he repaint his shed 3 times because it was too cheerful. I guess when people like that lose control, they crumble fast. A month later, I got a letter from the HOA, hand-delivered by the new interim president. A quiet guy named Tom who'd always kept his head down. "Mr. and Mrs. Jensen," he said, "on behalf of the board, we owe you an apology. Karen's actions were completely unacceptable." Laura nodded. "We all make mistakes," she said, "but what matters is learning from them." He smiled awkwardly and left. That evening, Laura and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the oaks. The air was cool, the cicadas humming, and for the first time in months, the neighborhood was still. "You handled that better than anyone I know," I told her. She chuckled softly. "When you've dealt with real threats, a clipboard doesn't scare you much." "Still," I said, "it's something. Seeing a bully like that get her reckoning." Laura took my hand. "People like her think power comes from control. But real power, the kind that lasts, comes from composure. From knowing who you are and refusing to let someone small make you smaller." I looked at her, proud beyond words. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from the city courthouse. Karen had pled guilty to trespassing and received a fine and probation. The HOA stripped her of her role permanently. She moved out that summer. Rumor was she tried to start another HOA in her new neighborhood, but didn't last long. Life in Maple Grove changed for the better. People started talking more, smiling more. The fences didn't seem as high anymore. Sometimes when I mow the lawn, I still catch a neighbor waving and chuckling, saying, "Commander Jensen, keeping the peace again?" And I'll laugh because they're right. Laura doesn't wear a uniform anymore, but the discipline, grace, and quiet strength she carries, that's the kind of authority no badge can match. It's funny, isn't it? Some folks spend their lives chasing control, while others earn respect just by standing tall. Karen called the cops that day thinking she could win a petty fight. Instead, she ended up facing the very lesson she'd refused to learn, that you can't bully your way into power and you can't trespass into someone else's peace. And as for my wife, she didn't just teach me that lesson. She taught the whole neighborhood. Because sometimes the strongest person in the room doesn't need to shout. Sometimes she just has to stand her ground and let the world remember why she was called Commander.